Will sex trafficking spike in Las Vegas because of the Super Bowl? That's one of several questions we're asking during Human Trafficking Prevention Month this week on Nevada Week.
Support for Nevada Week is provided by Senator William H. Hernstedt.
Welcome to Nevada Week. I'm Amber Renee Dixon. According to World Population Review, Nevada has the second highest rate of human trafficking in the country. So why is it so prevalent and what can prevent it? Here to help answer those questions are Linda Perez, CEO of The Shade Tree, Kim Small, CEO of Signs of Hope, Deputy Chief Nick Farisi of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, and Jessica Kay, a sex trafficking survivor and social worker. Thank you all for joining us on this very important topic. I want to start with the Super Bowl, and I want to start with you, Jessica, since you were trafficked here in Las Vegas. From your perspective, does sex trafficking increase in the city that hosts the Super Bowl, and if so, how much?
I don't know about how much, but I know wherever there's disposable income and there is a lot of humans, it is naturally going to attract human trafficking. So it takes disposable income, obviously, to purchase sex. And so, yeah, we will see an increase. Studies do show that what happens is crime, including prostitution, increase before and after the big event, and actually decrease during the big event, which is because everybody's tuned in to what is, the big event. So it's not just the Super Bowl, it's anything that brings in large amount of people with disposable income.
You and I had talked and you mentioned CES, which is in town next week.
CES, big conventions, Formula One, boxing matches, those were things that we went to and our trafficker would take us to in order to make more money and capitalize on those opportunities.
Deputy Chief Farisi.
Yeah, and our stance is, this happens every single day, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So what we are trying to do is use the event of the Super Bowl to bring awareness to the community, because while a big event brings people in, Las Vegas has big events and hosts big events every single day and every single week. So this is something that it's not just unique to the Super Bowl.
Right. You agree with that? Anything to add?
Absolutely. I think you and I had talked, Amber, and I feel like we need to get away from saying it's the Super Bowl or F1 and those types. We know that the conferences and the big events attract more people, and that's why we're going to see the spike. So yes, the Super Bowl, all of that, but not specifically saying it is the Super Bowl's fault that we're going to see an increase. It is a large event that's going to attract people.
Granted, Kim, your organization, Signs of Hope, is getting money from the Super Bowl because of this issue.
We're getting the added resources necessary to combat the spike that's going to happen, because as my colleagues have said, we see it. We see it with larger events. So I've always said if we had the resources that are being afforded to us with the Super Bowl on a daily basis, we'd still see large numbers. So this happens to be an opportunity for us to work diligently with our partners to combat it.
Oh, that kind of, if you had the resources that the Super Bowl is providing to you for this event on a daily basis, you'd still be facing a large number?
We would see a large number. We might not see as large as when we do have larger events, but we still see a large number.
Okay. For Formula One, Metro did reportedly arrest 70 people in relation to sex trafficking as part of an operation. Now, there are sex workers here in Las Vegas. They call themselves voluntary sex workers. They do it to make money for themselves, and they oppose these kind of operations. There is one named Adeline Gray who wrote an opinion column in the Nevada Independent. She wrote, quote, "Catching real traffickers is too much hard work. Locking up prostitutes and their clients who are engaged in commercial consensual sex is a quick way to boost arrest numbers when all it really does is waste government money and community resources. How would you respond to that?
She's entitled to her opinion, but I highly disagree with that. First off, we always take a victim-centered approach to any of our operations. And the comment about it's too much work going after the traffickers, I disagree, because if you look at the numbers that we provided for the operations that we did, yes, there was enforcement operations going after the sex seller, but we had very large numbers going after the traffickers and the sex buyers as well.
Do you have anything to add to that, Jessica?
First off, the buying of women and children isn't an occupation or a hobby, it's a violation. I think that people, this is my opinion, but I think people engaging in consensual sex work, I think it's a trauma response. Many sex workers are victims of human trafficking. Many know that. And I think also sometimes they think this is their only pathway out. And so I disagree. I think the amount of violence that I experience, both from my trafficker as well as buyers, needs to be held accountable. And I think most victims would feel that same way.
Now, when you were being trafficked, would you have agreed with this woman?
I most likely would have told you it was my choice. It took me about 5 years to recognize that I was a victim. So in the moment, I probably would have argued that it was consensual and it was my choice.
And that's why it's so important for us law enforcement, for us to take that victim-centered approach, because it might take 5, 6, or 7 times of interacting with that person before they're willing to accept services and try to get away from their trafficker.
Some do not see themselves, as
Right.
Jessica said, as being trafficked, as a victim.
Yeah.
And that's why our partnership with Metro is so important, to go out and provide the resources. They may take it, they may not, but we'll keep going out and offering those resources.
And paint a picture of what that looks like when organizations like yours go out with Metro. And what are you trying to do?
What we're trying to do is offer them a different way of life. And what we're providing for them is opportunities to get out of the life, be it transportation, travel to where they're from, shelter, like with our partners at the Shade Tree, or medical resources. We're here, we're out there on a nightly basis to tell them, here's who we are, here's what is available to you, here's what you can have when you're ready for it.
Yeah.
And when you are out there, what are the responses you're getting?
When they went out for this last night, my
Formula
executive
One?
assistant, yes, she's also our human traffic project coordinator that works closely with the task force, which I think we need to recognize the human trafficking task force, the Southern Nevada Human Trafficking Task Force, because we are doing amazing things in the community, and by collaborating and working together, that's how we're being able to do that. And like Kim said, they're out there every night and they are offering a different way of life when they're ready.
When they're ready, Jessica.
It's important too. We're not just doing this because of Formula One. We do these.
Yes.
We do monthly stand-down events with the Human Trafficking Task Force, where we go out and it's no arrests, no citations. It's all outreach. And then I remember my time before I promoted to deputy chief, when I was the captain of the Spring Valley Area Command. We were doing monthly operations just as patrol on the West Trop corridor, which is a high-volume sex trafficking corridor with Signs of Hope, where patrol officers are going out. And to Kim's point, we're offering them housing, we're offering them medical, we're offering them transportation, anything we can to get them to escape that lifestyle.
But at the same time, you're sometimes arresting them.
Yeah, there are times that we have to arrest. We have to balance public safety with outreach. And sometimes that arrest or that citation is that nudge that they need to maybe take a step back and reflect and realize that they are being sex trafficked and they are a victim, and get that help.
Jessica, was that the case for you? You were arrested.
I was arrested. No, that was not the case. I actually had an officer tell me, all right, I'll see you again in a couple weeks, when I was released from jail. But also sex trafficking wasn't even written into law at that time. So sex trafficking has only been in Nevada law since 2013.
What years were you working?
I was arrested in 2007. So that's when the end of 2007 is when I was escaped from my trafficker.
Okay, so that didn't work. The arrest didn't work. What was it that finally made you realize?
So I knew I was a victim of domestic violence. So after I left my trafficker, I was in domestic violence for 8 years. And so I had started telling my story as a survivor of domestic violence as a way for myself to heal. And then I was getting my master's degree at the University of Southern California, and I was in a violence against women's class, and I had a breakdown and a breakthrough in class because it was the psychoeducation of what human trafficking looked like and was that made me, it finally had just kind of really clicked in my head that like this is what had happened to me. And luckily I was surrounded by my professor and peers that really showed up for me in a courageous way. And so I was able to like process and do what I had to do, but yeah.
And it's stories like that and survivors like her that train our detectives and our officers, because you're right, 2006, 2005, how we viewed human trafficking and how we did traditional vice enforcement didn't work, but that's just what we did. This victim-centered approach where, yes, you might get a ticket, you might get arrested, but you're treated as a victim. You're treated as a human being. And Sheriff McMahill has made humanity, injecting humanity into everything that we do, one of his top priorities. And human trafficking is just the tip of the spear of how we do that.
Yeah. And we need more survivors at the forefront.
Yes.
We all know that, right? There's only a handful of us in Nevada doing work. We would love more because it's that survivor to survivor interaction too that can, one, help victims understand, as well as just, I don't know, there's something healing when survivors are put together that I can't really describe to the general public, but there's just this healing connection that happens, as well as like training, right? Because the crime is ever evolving.
Yes.
So the only way we're gonna know how this crime is evolving is by people with lived experience. And so we need more survivor leaders at the forefront, not just in Nevada, across the country. We need survivors leading this movement.
Yes, for
Here's
sure.
what I don't understand is if someone is being trafficked and they are unaware of it, they have no idea, how do you get into their heads?
It's
and
building
make them-
relationships at first.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just building relationship, especially survivor to survivor, right? So then there's some side conversations about like there's other ways and you don't have to do
Yes.
this. And
When we do the stand down events as
And what
Deputy
does that
Chief,
look like?
it's actually it's a lot of our task force organizations out. And we're set up, we have medical, we have clothing, we have food.
At one
At
location.
one location. And we're able to provide these resources right then and there. And we're able to say, and sometimes, Amber, we see the same people over and over again. And so it is building that trust. We do have a social worker, or a licensed clinical social worker on site to talk to them when they're ready, if they're ready. And we had one young lady that said, no, I don't want to talk, but she kept talking. And that made us feel good. Like, okay, let's keep talking to her. And she kept saying, no, I don't want to talk, but she kept talking to us. What makes us proud is when they leave with resources. Because we know that, okay, they have that when they're ready. And maybe they're ready now. Maybe they'll go back to where they're living and they'll take advantage of what we've offered.
You have to be careful with those events because of pimps possibly showing up, right?
Sure. And one of the things that also that those nights provide, and sometimes it's just the food. Like Kim said, the joy of just them walking away with resources, with the phone numbers on who to call. They're not getting arrested tonight, but sometimes it's just the gratification or the thankfulness of just having food.
my trafficker used to withhold food, so we weren't allowed to eat at all. There was no food kept in our house until we hit our quota, which for me was $2,500 a night. And so the only way I would be able to eat is if a buyer happened to buy me food. So that is a real thing, right? And then building that relationship, because and it's not just these people, it's hotel staff, it's people, places that we frequent. If we feel safe, eventually when, our trafficker may have beat us before we came out tonight, or we are at our wit's end and realizing enough is enough and I have to break this cycle that I'm in, we will find somebody who we feel safe with.
Okay.
And you hit on an important topic, because that's part of our outreach and partnering. It's not just with our nonprofit groups, but we train hotels, we train security and casino workers, we train airport staff, we train baristas at Starbucks, just to that one little sign that they might see something. And we say the See Something, Say Something campaign, and it's predominantly around counterterrorism and homeland security, but it's so much more than that. And if somebody just picks up on one cue and then makes a phone call and gets the right people to that situation, we can really help a victim.
Let's name some of those cues. What should people be looking for? And we're talking about an average person out in public?
Yeah, I think when we had talked, I mentioned about grooming, and I know that Jessica can explain a lot about that, but it's just understanding if you're seeing changes in behavior, or you're seeing this woman that is isolated or, cut off. And one of the things I wanted to mention, because obviously we're the shade tree, we are the shelter, but we're looking at different ways, and we learned that from Jessica, from Kim and her team at Signs of Hope, from Metro. We're all kind of learning together on what is the best way to address what's going on in our community and the signs to look for. So for me, it's education and awareness, but I love working so closely with these organizations because we're learning from each other.
And so what are you telling people that are out in public and may come across someone who's being trafficked?
What the task force and Signs of Hope are doing is providing the hotline. We do have a 24/7 hotline that they're able to call with tips. They're able to call if a victim needs resources, they're able to call us. What we're training the staff in the front house and the back house of the casinos and the hotels is to look for, like Linda said, people who are isolated. I guess it's not just one thing. It's a multitude of things to look for, but once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
We teach our young patrol officers, just even on a car stop, if it's a male and a female and the female is eyes down, you try to ask the female a question and the male answers, finishes, doesn't let her talk. If the male holds her ID for her, sometimes I go out with my wife and I do hold her ID, but I'm not saying that's the be all end all, but it's putting the whole package together and just looking at 2 or 3 things that maybe it's not, but let's treat it like it is until it's not.
Absolutely.
Jessica, the training that's being done within hotels is so important because you were actually sold by bellhops, you said, security guards at hotels. How part of our hotel system here in Las Vegas is this?
It's deep. It's deep. I mean, when you have high rollers coming in looking for women and children, and somebody that works in a casino knows how to get them, they are also going to make money off the transaction. So if I would get a buyer through a concierge or a security guard, they would get part of my payment when I left the hotel. So it is deep. I will say the hotels have definitely really stepping up and really trying to combat this. I will say that I do a lot of work with Nevada Resorts Association and things like that, but there's still a long ways to go. And I think we need to educate the community, not only for signs, but also how to prevent themselves from becoming victims of trafficking, right? So children as well, right? So there's so many pathways from social media, in our school systems, it's happening, family is trafficking. And so if you don't know what something is, how can you protect yourself from it? And so I think we have to talk about the whole picture
Well,
when
let's
we
talk
are
about
talking
your
about that.
situation. How did you become trafficked?
I didn't know anything. I come from a small town in Iowa. We don't talk about hard things. We don't have prostitution. I mean, we do, but not that I was aware of, right? And I grew up in a very broken home. So drug addiction, domestic violence. So that was very normalized for me at a very young age. My first memory is SWAT raiding our house. I was 5 years old. And so I was broken, right? I was searching for love and belonging and finding myself in unhealthy relationships. I was in domestic violence, which led me to losing my home. I had to have my son go live with his father, and that is when I met my trafficker. So I was vulnerable. I was homeless. I didn't have my son with me. I had no resources. And he groomed me for about 4 to 6 months before he put me on the track.
How did he groom you?
love, affection, fulfilling my needs, right? So I needed a home. He gave me a place to stay, right? Clothing, paying my bills, right? So any way like that. And I thought he was my boyfriend, so I'm in love too, right?
You said in Iowa there is no prostitution. And, I mean, there is prostitution, but it's not legal like it is in parts of Nevada.
Parts of Nevada.
Parts of Nevada. How does that complicate what you do?
Well, it's very challenging because even when we go out and we do sex buyer operations, a lot of them know that what they're doing and it's illegal, but some don't. And this what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas fantasy that prostitution is legal. It's hard to overcome. And when you educate these people and you tell them that it's illegal in Clark County, and when you look at the size of Clark County, just to put it in perspective, it's larger than the state of New Jersey. So while prostitution is legal in rural counties, it's not here, and it's a big education piece that we incorporate when we are doing outreach.
But can I say something?
Yes, of course.
I think people need to understand trafficking is happening in our brothels too. So just because it's legalized
Absolutely.
does not mean it's safer. My trafficker had 3 girls in a brothel. That was always a threat for us because I can't leave. If he puts me in a brothel, I can't leave. You don't just come and go as you please when you're in
Absolutely.
brothels. So brothels are legal pimping.
Is the presence of prostitution in Nevada what contributes to the high rate of human trafficking here?
Yeah, our laws do have to work for the traffickers and the buyers. It makes it a little easier for them, right, to come out here. I heard a story once about this trafficker from LA who grew up in a family of traffickers, and they would come out here to essentially teach their boys how to pimp out here because it was easier and it was part of our culture. That's the thing. Now the hotels have done a great job of cleaning some of this up, but if you think 5-10 years ago, it was extremely visible in our casinos. It's not as visible now, but it's still happening.
You counter that?
No, I agree with her, but if you remember, as we opened up at the beginning of the segment, wherever there's a large population of people and disposable income, this is going to be one of those things that happens. And as a tourist destination, as an event destination, as we move into world-class events and entertainment, this is a byproduct of it. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say how great our community partners in the hotels are. We have phenomenal relationships with all of our hotels on the Strip and the downtown corridor, and even our local hotels. They work with us, they understand this, and there might have been a time that this was a dirty little secret years ago that got swept under the rug. That's not the case anymore. And I can say that firsthand from working with these hotels and casinos.
Okay.
I can too. I want to say the casinos are doing an incredible job of stepping up.
They really have. They do take an interest. They want to be educated. They want their staff educated. We meet with them on a monthly basis to go over our resources available to them. They reach out to us all the time and ask, can you come out and do the trainings? And we're happy to do so.
As we discussed, there isn't any education within the school system currently right now about sex trafficking.
There's no mandated education.
Okay.
We are in some of Clark County School District's schools providing education, not just on trafficking, but on rape culture, child abuse as well.
Okay.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, well, and then here's another aspect. If we are to talk with children about this, yet this is happening within families.
Yes.
Can you explain that? How do you even go about solving that?
I just reference myself, and I'm a survivor of domestic violence. Growing up in a domestic violence home, that was normal to me. And as we spoke yesterday, I said the education and awareness piece is so important, but also especially for our young children because they don't know what they're seeing. And for myself, it's almost 80% that someone growing up in an environment like that will either be a victim or an abuser, and I'm part of that. So I really believe that education needs to happen at that level, but in a way to get kids to start thinking or to ask questions or to have counselors in the school
But
to
it's
be
going to
able
have
to.
Yeah, it's going to have to come from someone outside of the
Yes.
family because
Yes, absolutely.
families are trafficking their own.
Families are
It's a
trafficking.
layered approach because, for the problem that you have that the family, the adults, the grown-ups are the root cause of the problem, you have the other side of that coin where parents are disengaged or they don't know, you know, and I tell parents, be nosy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your kids have no freedom. Their devices, be in those devices, because on this day and age of technology, it's made it that much easier for traffickers to groom victims. And whether they meet them on social media, and you know, I don't have social media myself, my kids don't have it, and it's part of that is to protect them, because it's so easy to send a message and then the next thing you know, they're being groomed and they're in love, and you have this child running away at 14, 15, 16 years old thinking they're in love, and the next thing you know, they're being trafficked.
Looking for love that they may have lacked, similar to
Yeah,
your situation.
this is why kids at risk.
But it's
Right.
not. But it's
Yeah.
not just broken homes. So for every story you have
Right.
of somebody that's in a
Foster
broken
care.
home
Right.
or foster care, I know of victims that come from well-established homes that their parents are loving and provide everything they want for them. But for whatever reason, this child is seeking something else, or they don't even realize they're being groomed. They just think that they're socially interacting with somebody.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to go back to the family piece, because it could be this family looks like they have it all together, but you have to, uncles, cousins, like we have to be aware and we have to educate our families, because it's happening within our families.
And as we work in CCSD schools, we also train their teachers on what to look for, because they spend
Yeah.
a lot of time with the kids. If a child is being picked up by a strange older person that you've never seen, ask, what's going on? Who are you? Or are you allowed to pick them up? Ask the questions.
We got to
It's
be
about
nosy.
building relationships at the end of the day, right? Because their family is their family, and children don't want better families, they want their family to be better. And so they're not necessarily going to say, Uncle Johnny touched me, right? And so it's about building those relationships, whether they're children or adult, where they have safe spaces.
Unfortunately, we have run out of time. We could go on and on about this, but thank you all for joining
Thank
us,
you.
and thank you for watching. For any of the resources discussed here, go to vegaspbs.org/Nevada Week, and I'll see you next week on Nevada Week.